A common criticism of Sasuke is that he's carried by plot armor, because as we see throughout the series, Sasuke more often than not will survive a near-death encounter, making his survival seem solely for the plot. I think this perspective is a bit flawed, however, and if I were to summarize my issues with it, it would be that this take, in the most generous of interpretations, is just a poorly defined accusation. The Oxford definition for plot armor is at best extremely vague and proposes a neutral connotation that would include literally any high-stakes scenario in any work of fiction. Using this definition, there would be no negative connotation surrounding the term, and as such the take would cease to be criticism and be more of an observation. For the criticism to work, there needs to be parameters that a moment has to fulfill to qualify as having plot armor. So for the sake of this video, I think it's reasonable to define a plot armor moment as one that is either unreasonable, as in the justification is so convoluted that it disrupts the suspension of disbelief, or alternatively it contradicts something previously established within the series, essentially an unexplained or poorly explained survival. A good example of this is Tsunade being saved by Dan, who conveniently had a jutsu that turned him into a ghost that pinpointed her exact location and allowed him to move fast enough to save her from Madara. This scene is so incredibly contrived, especially with the context of his death, that there is no other way to put it other than Tsunade simply had plot armor. So with that being said, I've rounded up all of Sasuke's most popular plot armor moments in chronological order to determine whether or not his survival at each encounter is plot armor, and if we found out that more often than not they are, then that would be the conclusion. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. I make analysis videos like this all the time, so leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. Sasuke has had many run-ins with death between the original Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, and his presumed death to Haku laid the groundwork for the type of story Naruto was and what it meant to be a shinobi in the Naruto world. After being trapped in Haku's ice mirrors, both Naruto and Sasuke were pelted by volleys of senbon until Haku, frustrated by Sasuke's increasing acclamation to his speed, charged at Naruto in an attempt to bait Sasuke, who dropped his guard, taking the armada of senbon in his stead. In Haku's own words, "He struck one blow at me, and without any sign of shirking, he sacrificed himself for you." From this point on, Sasuke is presumed dead until the end of the arc, where it's revealed that Haku never planned on killing him from the start. Since Haku's introduction, it's made abundantly clear that he's a master at acupuncture or pressure point attacks using his various senbon. This isn't a Naruto-specific concept, however, and it's pretty common in most Asian media, most notably in Dragon Ball, where you can outright kill someone or make it seem as if you killed someone by simply attacking their pressure points. In Haku's case, he can strike Zabuza's neck with such finesse that he can put him in a death-like trance until he's able to relocate him. The effect seems to be temporary as Zabuza wakes up on his own, and given the time between his strike and revival and Sasuke's strike and revival, it is entirely plausible for it to be the same in Sasuke's case. But why would Haku do that for Sasuke? It's entirely plausible for Haku to go out of his way to do that for Zabuza since they're allies, but he and Sasuke were enemies. At the beginning of their fight, it's made abundantly clear that Haku does not want to kill Sasuke, or anyone for that matter. He directly says to Sasuke that he doesn't want to kill him, and Sasuke himself realizes that the cuts Haku gave him were superficial. Haku is someone who admits to finding it hard to embrace the full shinobi philosophy, as in he prefers not to kill unless forced into that situation. Something that gets overlooked, however, is that past this point, both Naruto and Sasuke are forced into a defensive position and are barely able to move, which means that there really is no reason for Haku, by his own morals, to kill them, especially since he has techniques to subdue them instead. It also goes against his very nature. Zabuza describes Haku as being someone who is too kind and too gentle, which is reflected in his approach to the conflict, choosing to fight Naruto himself, knowing that Zabuza wouldn't be as lenient as he would, which leads me to the conclusion that while there was some plot convenience, the setup for Haku's morality was done well enough, and since it's narratively consistent, this moment wouldn't be considered plot armor. Sasuke killing Orochimaru was one of the many milestones that Sasuke would achieve on his path to killing Itachi and seeking justice for his clan. Orochimaru had preyed on Sasuke's ambitions and had groomed him with the sole purpose of using him as a perfect vessel through the use of the transference ritual. After preemptively attacking Orochimaru, Sasuke would cut down the Great White Snake, but unbeknownst to him, the blood had a numbing effect, rendering Sasuke vulnerable to attack. Orochimaru seized this opportunity to perform the ritual early with the hopes of taking over Sasuke's body, but Sasuke completely overpowered his ritual space, absorbing Orochimaru instead. And this shouldn't really surprise you. In part 1, Orochimaru was literally dying. He reached the limit of his current vessel and his body was tearing itself apart, indicating that it was time to transfer to a new one. Sasuke was supposed to fulfill this role, but as we all know, his retrieval was delayed and Orochimaru was forced to take on a different host. Unfortunately, Genyomaru was chosen as Sasuke's stand-in, and for a time it worked, but after 2.5 years, drawing close to the time of his next transference and reeling from the effects of the Reaper Death Seal, Orochimaru was massively weakened, with his body being stated by Kabuto to be reaching its breaking point and needing to take high-level medicine just to stay alive. It's only then that Sasuke was able to take him down, and even with a body supposedly heightened by forbidden jutsu and doping, Suigetsu notes that the only reason that Sasuke was able to win was because Orochimaru was weakened. This obviously isn't plot armor given the build-up and foreshadowing that took place over the course of 150 chapters, but this next instance is a lot more nuanced. Sasuke surviving Deidara's C0 is by far the most controversial moment as it relates to Sasuke's plot armor, barring another moment that's coming up soon. Deidara, after being pushed to his limit both physically and mentally, used his trump card, the C0, a massive chakra bomb that dwarfed even mountains. Sasuke was right at the epicenter and would have been vaporized if he had not summoned Manda, put him in a genjutsu, and had Suigetsu reverse summon him. This entire sequence happens in a matter of moments, and at face value, this seems highly unreasonable, but there are quite a lot of misconceptions and details that people overlook. The biggest misconception that people have is that Sasuke was out of chakra or even low on chakra, and this is based on a guess by Deidara, but as far as we know, Deidara has no way of knowing whether or not that is actually true. Sasuke also turns off a Sharingan, presumably to conserve chakra, but there is a surefire way to know that Sasuke wasn't out of chakra, and that is because Orochimaru didn't emerge. Itachi spent the entirety of his fight with Sasuke draining his chakra so that the curse mark would free Orochimaru's 8-headed serpent. Zetsu explains that since Sasuke had no more chakra, Orochimaru's chakra that he had absorbed and suppressed had shoved its way to the surface, which means that even after smacking around Deidara the entire fight, he still had enough power to suppress Orochimaru, or else he would reflexively undergo his version 2 curse mark transformation. There should also not be any problem with him summoning Manda, specifically since he has the same summoning mark on his forearm that Orochimaru had, which allowed Orochimaru to summon Manda even while he was unable to use ninjutsu with his arms. There should also be no problem with Sasuke summoning Manda in general, since at the beginning of their fight, as if to foreshadow what would happen in the end, Sasuke does the exact same thing, summoning another snake to protect himself from Deidara's clay bombs. I think the only problem would be the time frame in which he summoned him, but that shouldn't really be a problem. For one, Deidara announces that he is going to blow himself up and monologues for a couple seconds, giving Sasuke ample time to set up whatever he was going to do, such as reactivating his Sharingan, which we see him do as the explosion goes off. And 2, he doesn't just no-sell the explosion. Manda literally dies from said explosion, and Sasuke was heavily injured from the shockwave. The only rebuttal to this would probably be that he shouldn't have been able to withstand the explosion in general, but that is just not consistent with Shinobi as it relates to explosions. Rock Lee is able to tank an explosion point blank without even having his clothes damaged, Sakura explodes a paper bomb on herself to repel Satsuru's poison, and Obito had a swarm of paper bombs detonate practically inside his body, and only the arm that was closest to the epicenter was blown off. And while these may not be on the same level as C0, it sets a precedent that Shinobi can take explosions head-on with minimal damage, so it isn't unreasonable for Sasuke to survive at most a couple seconds of the explosion to summon Manda and put him under a genjutsu. The same could be said, however, for his win over Itachi. Sasuke's fight against Itachi is by far the most impactful in Sasuke's development over the course of the series. Sasuke tracked Itachi down to his hideout with the sole purpose of killing him, but was completely outmatched the entire fight. And even after using his trump card Kirin, Itachi easily nullified it with his Susanoo, choosing to not even continue their fight, but rather focus his attention on slaying Orochimaru, who had just emerged from his body. And even in the end, it wasn't Sasuke who landed the finishing blow on Itachi, Itachi, but rather Itachi succumbing to the effects of his illness as well as chakra exhaustion. Similar to the Haku situation, Sasuke's survival is built around the characterization of his opponent. Obito, after treating Sasuke's wounds, explains to Sasuke that Itachi was doing everything to protect him and was essentially sandbagging the entire fight, choosing not to kill Sasuke even though he had many opportunities to do so. This all stems from Itachi's story with the massacre, where the only condition he had was for Sasuke to be spared, so killing Sasuke would be completely antithetical. This is also evident in Itachi's actions before the fight, where he leaves Sasuke alive instead of killing him like the other Uchiha, or when he doesn't kill him when he had the chance to at the end. You could make the case that the reason that Itachi kept him alive was because he wanted Sasuke to unlock the EMS so he could get the EMS, but at the time of the fight, Sasuke was only at 3 Tomoe, which would be all the more reason not to kill him. And now that I'm thinking about it, it would be bad writing, at least from my perspective, if Itachi did actually kill him, but since his survival was entirely out of his control and based solely on the storyline of another separate character, I wouldn't be mad if you called it plot convenience, but I wouldn't consider this plot armor. The justification is thoroughly explained and works within the series, so by definition it just wouldn't count. The same could not be said for B though. Sasuke's fight against Killer B, similar to Deidara, is a lot more controversial, but for different reasons. Team Taka's victory over B is one of Sasuke's most important developmental moments, as it's here where he first uses his Mangekyo Sharingan. Sasuke, after receiving the mission from Obito, goes to the Land of Lightning in order to capture B, but gets fatally injured twice and barely escapes with his life after trying to take on the A-Tails. Sasuke manages to hit Gyuki with an Amaterasu that Gyuki substitute one of his tails for, allowing Sasuke to leave with the transformed tail. But this wasn't out of pure luck. Sasuke made Taka specifically for their specific abilities and their battle prowess. He knew he couldn't take on B alone, so he made a team to help him, which isn't plot armor, it's just being smart. Suigetsu is a strong battle asset, with a very strong Kekkei Genkai, which allowed him to act as a vanguard and set up combo attacks such as using his liquid body in conjunction with Sasuke's Chidori to electrocute B, and use the surrounding lake to increase his size, taking the brunt of Gyuki's Bijou Bomb. Karin is in a similar boat, but in the opposite direction, where she serves as the healer of the group with the sole purpose of healing Sasuke. Jugo is the most interesting case since his purpose wasn't explicitly shown, but he sort of serves a more rounded role where he acts as both a vanguard and healer for specifically Sasuke, since he does have a high compatibility with his curse mark. This is why he is able to merge his cells with Sasuke and mitigate the damage from B's lariat. And still, Sasuke didn't just rely on his team, since for a large part he was the one doing most of the heavy lifting, and also neutralized B's sword barrage by spreading Ryoton throughout his body so the attacks would avoid vital organs. This entire fight is simply the result of immaculate preparation, and to call it plot armor would be disingenuous. His encounter with Inoki, however, is entirely plot armor. Sasuke made his way through the Summit Gauntlet for the sole purpose of killing Danzo. On his way, however, he would encounter the Raikage, who would lose an arm and possibly his legs from his Amaterasu, and while he was pressed by Gaara, Temari, and Darui, he casually shrugged off their attacks with his Susanoo. He then goes on to tank the onslaught of both Mei and Chojuro, but gets hit with a particle style that by all interpretations should have killed him. We find out a couple pages later that Obito was the one who saved him, but that shouldn't really matter. Obito did not save Sasuke before the attack went off, and we know this because we visibly see the shading of Sasuke's silhouette in the particle style. This means that Sasuke was hit by an attack that bypasses durability and dismantles you at the atomic level, and stood in there until Obito swooped in and saved him. There is no justification for this that doesn't disrupt the suspension of disbelief, since even if you were to make the case that Sasuke tanked durability negation with his durability, which doesn't make any sense by the way, there is no argument you could make for his clothes. And don't get me wrong, Obito being there to save him isn't the plot armor, since we know he went there with him to protect him and nurture his hatred. The problem is that this is not something you can reasonably save someone from without making it contrived. With Madara, however, this is a lot more nuanced. After Madara captured the nine-tailed beasts and soundly defeated Tobirama, Sasuke descended from the sky in an attempt to catch Madara off guard, which got thwarted due to Madara's Limbo clones. Now suspended in the air by said Limbo clones, Madara stabs Sasuke in the heart, bringing him to the brink of death. Now there are a couple of things here that I want to talk about, the first being the way in which Sasuke was revived. Contrary to popular belief, Sasuke was not revived by Hagoromo. Hagoromo verbatim says that Naruto wasn't dead, which would be the same for Sasuke, and that he didn't have the power to revive either of them. It's only after Ten Tails Madara's lower body was left behind, something that contained the Nine Tails, Indra, and Hashira's chakra, that he was able to physically manifest in the real world and summon the souls of the previous Kage. The actual reason for Sasuke's revival is entirely the work of Kabuto, who pumped Sasuke's body full of Hashirama cells that accelerated his healing and regeneration. This makes sense since Hashirama cells are able to save Obito from succumbing to half of his body being crushed, and even Hashirama himself was able to reflexively perform creation rebirth level regeneration, something that can even regenerate organs and limbs. He also gets a buff from the Hashirama cells via the new Rinnegan that, depending on your interpretation, is the result of Indra and Ashura's chakra combining, stated by Hagoromo to be the catalyst to awakening the Rinnegan. These things by themselves wouldn't be considered plot armor, but what does kind of stretch the suspension of disbelief is how convenient it was for Kabuto to be there at the perfect time to save him. It isn't necessarily the fact that he's there, since we can chalk it up to Kabuto feeling the need to do good deeds because of the Izanami, but it's incredibly convenient that Kabuto made his way all the way from the cave at just the right time to find Sasuke at just the right time to save him. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's contrived, however, since everything makes sense and is narratively consistent, it's just a bit convenient, which is par for the course for shonen. But now that I think about it, I probably should have put a counter for all of the plot armor moments, but by my count, Sasuke had one actual plot armor moment, that being his encounter with Inoki, and 3 plot convenient moments with Haku, Itachi, and Madara. And that's mostly for the fact that in those moments he sorta got saved against his will, and even though these moments are properly explained and not contrived, the plot is kinda on his side, so I have to put like a warning there. But anyways, I think we've answered the question of whether or not Sasuke is carried by plot armor. I personally think he doesn't, but let me know what y'all think in the comments down below and what conclusion y'all came to. But for now, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye!